Good afternoon. Am I audible to you all?
Yes, sir.
Oh, that's great. And how's the audio? I mean, it's nicely audible or is it low?
Yes, sir.
This
It's quite
fine?
audible.
Good, good,
Yes,
good.
sir.
Yesterday there was some problem we were encountering, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's wait for others also to join in, right? There are lesser number of participants. Let them join quickly and then we'll proceed. Okay.
Good evening, sir.
चला गया हो तो वह
Okay, folks. So I guess the reasonable number of people who've joined in. We'll proceed and let people join in subsequently during the session. Okay. So without much further ado, let's go ahead. By now, you would have understood what economics is all about. As I said, economics is a science that really talks about the way of life, the way if others are life sciences, economics is a science of life. It helps you rationally take decisions and optimize your resource allocation for better outcomes, whether in present or in the future. And the subject matter of economics is applied by different stakeholders in the economy, and these can be people in general, consumers, producers, firms, managers, governments, planning agencies, and the central banking and non-banking institutions, and so on and so forth. So every individual or every group of stakeholders within the economic system can take advantage of this subject to improve the outcomes and achieve the objectives. The objectives, as we discussed, vary from individuals to firms, households to firms, and firms to government, but the fundamentals remain the same, right? So it's just that the what aspect of economics is to be covered in managerial, what aspect is to be covered in micro, what is to be covered in macro, or what is to be covered in international economics might slightly vary in terms of the coverage, but the fundamental principles on which the whole system is based remain the same. And we talked about managerial economics. We said it's the application of economics concepts and principles in management decision making from the perspective of running successful organizations. And that's what we discussed has an objective which can be in the short run to attain to penetrate in the market or to get revenues, to maximize your sales, to get market share. It could also be profit maximization, wealth maximization, brand building, and so on and so forth. But the ultimate goal of the business would be to sustain, and sustainability is probably one of the most important factors that we consider. If you've read a bit of Peter Drucker, he always said that the basic function of business is it consists of two primary functions, and they said it's innovation and marketing. So when we say innovation, we are talking about every aspect from production to operations, to supply chain, to logistics, to strategizing, everything which has an element of innovation and not just purely product development. And at the same time, the second aspect is all about marketing. So you should be able to understand the market demand, the consumer behavior, design products around their needs, and create value for the society, and be able to successfully market those products and get that value back out of them. So creating value for the customers and capturing value back from them in form of continuous purchase, patronage from those customers, and at the same time creating evangelizers who can promote your product to other customers. And that's what's happening in the digital marketing era today. So that's everything in business is probably based out of this mother subject called economics. So in managerial economics, we before we started yesterday, we talked about three important ways of decision making, tools that can be used in decision making, and we talked about marginal analysis, opportunity analysis, and time perspective principle. So the other principles also, like equimarginal and discounting principle, we did not cover them, are also based out of these. But these three I wanted you to understand. Then we understood one important aspect of marginal analysis, wherein we try to understand the relationship between total, marginal, and average, because based on yesterday's session, you would have understood that these three analyses are very important at a lot of places when you are trying to take rational decisions. So whether you're taking decisions related to production, whether related to allocation of resources, whether related to cost calculations, whether related to pricing solutions, pricing decisions, and similarly decisions related to profitability and all, you would find that the total, marginal, and average values will have their own importance in the decision making. So this is what we had discussed yesterday. So today we'll start with the subject formally. We've assumed that the objectives of the firm are clearly known to you. However, these were the general objectives of a firm that I shared: profit maximization, sales, revenue, cost minimization, wealth maximization, goodwill maximization, brand building, sustainability. These are all general objectives and goals, but firms can have their own specific goals depending on where do they stand in the whole market, right? And based on that, they need to strategize. So economics will be used in strategic decision making for these firms. Today we'll start with a very common question, a common problem that we address in economics, and this is called the central problem of an economy. And that's what we'll also understand from the perspective of the firms. And from there, we'll get a flow to our subject, from demand to production and cost to market structures and profits. So there are three problems, and we call them the central problems of economics. So central, we've already studied what economy is and how the economic circular flow happens, whether it is real or monetary. So central problems of or in an economy, right, are generally considered as three questions: what to produce, how to produce, right, how to produce,
And for
and
whom to produce.
yes, and for whom to produce. Very good, for whom to produce. I'm happy at least somebody spoke, and this is what I want in the class. Now, if you have already, you've come across these terms and you must have studied, I'll try to cover things which might not be very clear. So my question to all of you attending this class is that, these are three questions: what to produce, how, and for whom. What do you really interpret out of these three questions? Can anyone take a call and speak about what do you really understand out of these three questions. They seem very apparent, very simple, common sense answers, very self-explanatory. But then I would like to hear from you. What do you understand by what to produce, whom, how to produce, and for whom to produce? Anyone?
So just to meet the demand and supply in an economy, like what customers are actually demanding or what they actually need, the producer or the organization that is producing any product needs to understand that what actually customer wants from us, so that the money supply can be there smoothly in the in a country or in a state, but wherever it is.
And what do you understand by how to produce?
So means that what raw material or what are the resources we need, machinery or we need human resource, what are the things or what are the ways we can produce the thing.
Okay, and then the question comes, for whom?
So obviously we have to target a particular market, or we have to make a segmentation in the market, so that the product that we have produced should be a proper match with the demand or the
Very nice.
need for the customer.
I'm happy. Now I have a question to you. Now I have a question to you. When you sort of conceptualized a product that you would sell, let's say you identified that there is a demand for pens in the market. Okay, there are plenty of products, but for some reasons, and there were pens, there were aeroplanes for people to fly and stuff like that. But then based on certain wisdom and based on your own assessment of capabilities, you would have judged that if you want to create pens, how would you produce them, in what quantities would you produce them, what raw material would you use, what would be the cost, and how would you control that cost and get the output, right? All those aspects. But my question is that when you talk about segmentation and targeting, or when you talk about for whom to produce, if that question comes much later, as you said, that who is my target market, see, target market decisions as per marketing have to be taken much before. When you do a proof of concept or when you try to understand market opportunity, you're first trying to identify the demand, you said, right? Demand. And demand was related to what to produce. So when you were understanding demand, you also were trying to identify how many units would you like to produce, what is the demand, what is the quantity people demand. But can you anticipate demand without price? क्या प्राइस के बिना डिमांड एंटिसिपेट हो सकती है? अगर मैं आपसे पूछूं मैं एक पेन बनाने जा रहा हूं, आप खरीदेंगे कि नहीं, तो आपका पहला क्वेश्चन क्या होगा कि साहब ये बताइए पेन कितने का होगा, उसके फीचर्स क्या होंगे, किस तरह का होगा, एंड ऑल दैट स्टफ. So when you are talking about that, somewhere you are also keeping a tentative price into mind, or the quantity, because quantity demanded cannot be assumed without knowing the price. मार्केट सर्वे किया होगा कुछ. और पेन कौन सा बनाने जा रहे हैं? आर यू ट्राइंग टू मेक अ यूज एंड थ्रो पेन? आर यू ट्राइंग टू मेक a costly pen probably for regular use, a pen for regular use like Trimax or Parker or any other, or a costlier pen which ranges from 5,000 rupees, 2,000 to 5,000 rupees, or a luxury pen like Mont Blanc or any other which probably would start from 10,000 and go up to lakhs. So अगर आप टारगेट मार्केट बाद में ढूंढेंगे तो प्रोडक्ट आपने पहले बना दिया, तो ये तो पुश स्ट्रैटेजी हो जाएगी. इट इज अगेंस्ट मार्केटिंग. मार्केटिंग सेज identify the market, the need of the people, create a product around it, and you should know who your segmentation and target is, and then you produce a product, right? Yes or no? तो यहाँ पे सवाल
Yes,
लेट
sir.
नहीं हो जाएगा, ये सवाल लेट नहीं हो जाएगा. आपने कहा सेगमेंटेशन एंड टारगेट, ये तो कुछ ऐसा हो गया कि हमने कुछ बनाया, वी मेड अ प्रोडक्ट, एंड आफ्टर मेकिंग दिस प्रोडक्ट, राइट, वी आर ट्राइंग टू फाइंड हु इज गोइंग टू बाय इट. ये तो पूरा मैनेजमेंट का कॉन्सेप्ट ही फेल हो जाएगा. जबकि we were supposed to in marketing understand what is the need, who is going to buy, and then create a product around it. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So that's where academic knowledge is good enough, but उसको थोड़ा और डिटेल में समझना जरूरी है कि what to produce, how to produce, and for whom to produce is not exactly the way we are trying to understand it. Like you remember yesterday I talked about a term called rational or rationality, that economics is based on the premise of rationality, that people behave in a rational manner. A lot of people have criticized economics saying this assumption itself is wrong. People are not rational, and how do you expect them to be on the premise? But what we understood is that it was rationality did not mean that they're rational in terms of perfection, their decisions. It is about that people have subjective and bounded rationality. They behave in their own perceived rational manner. They may not be rational in the real sense, but in their own perspective, they try to do what they think is the best suiting to them. And that rationality cannot be judged because there are so many factors behind decisions. It's not just monetary or economic, or there can be emotions, there can be sentiments, there can be personality traits, there could be hidden objectives that you may not be aware of. And we discussed some objectives are not for the present, but for the future in mind. So it's very difficult to understand. The whole mankind is behaving irrationally when it comes to environment conservation. You all agree? The whole world knows that environment needs to be conserved, ecology needs to be conserved, there has to be sustainable development. We must keep the resources for our next generations to come. But we know that people are not behaving like that. Now, people are actually irrational, agreed. But to them, they are behaving rationally. Why? It's as good as they're believing that probably the resources are not so low that if, and many of them think if they don't give up the use of a resource, they give up, it doesn't really make much difference because there are several, millions of people who would still be consuming that product like that. Or it's like going to the gym. Exercising is good for health, but every day getting up and getting the results does not encourage you much, because the results would come after a long period of time. So there's not a quick pleasure that goes into going to the gym. So there are rational ways by which people take their own decisions, their own judgments. Same way it happens here. So please understand, when you answer these three questions of what, how, and for whom, and economics helps us understand these three questions. And we can also call them not only the central problems of the economy, because in that case, if I was doing macro, I would have covered like that, or here we'll understand it from the point of view of the firm, because I'm talking about managerial economics. So my point is, the firm needs to understand what to produce, and another question that goes along with that is what to produce and in what quantity and at what quantity. That's another thing that they need to understand. And when they're trying to understand what to produce and in what quantity, they must also know for this question, what would be the tentative price or the so-called category of product that you are trying to make. That means who is going to be your target market or your market segment, if I call it, right? Who is going to buy? Are the college going students going to buy my pen? Are the students who are going to private institutions and paying a heavy salary going to buy it? Or is it the students who are going to economy institutions, government public institutions, they are going to buy it? Are the students are these students those who are going to buy a pen between 10 to 50 rupees, which has a refill, or they would like to buy a pen which looks good on their pocket and they crack their interviews, they wear this pen on their pockets when they go for interviews? Or is it going to be a costly pen, right? So you need to understand so many things when you're talking about what to produce. So when we are talking about the product, what to produce means what is the product. So you were right that product is first about anticipating the demand. What is it that people want, and identifying those products. But since you can't produce everything, you would identify products that you will be able to produce, which we'll subsequently talk about in how to produce. But then this product has to answer a lot of things. Number one, as I said, what category of product are you going to make? Which also means for which segment of the market are you going to make? What would be, in loose terms, the tentative price, because it will depend on the segment and the category. If I'm making a luxury pen for riches, it could be anything. If it's a Mont Blanc Cartier, it can go in thousands and lakhs. If it is going to be a Parker or something to compete with Schaeffer or Waterman or others, it can be somewhere up to 5,000-10,000 rupees. And if it is it's something like a nice metal pen coming from any of the XYZ brands, up to 100, 200, 300 rupees, or is it going to be something lesser than that? So all this will also determine the quantity that you would like to produce. Now obviously you can't produce for the whole market, whole economy, because not everybody is going to buy your product from that segment. There may be other players in the market, but a rough idea aapko chahiye when you are answering this question of what to produce. So to simplify the whole thing, I would say what to produce, at what quantity, and at what tentative price. तो मैंने प्राइस से लिंक करने की कोशिश की इसको, कि टेंटेटिव किस प्राइस का प्रोडक्ट बना रहा हूँ, जाहिर है वो डिटरमाइन करेगा किस सेगमेंट के लिए बना रहा हूँ, किस कैटेगरी का. अगर महंगा है तो लग्जरी प्रोडक्ट बना रहा हूँ, कॉस्टली प्रोडक्ट बना रहा हूँ, सुपीरियर प्रोडक्ट बना रहा हूँ, या रेगुलर प्रोडक्ट बना रहा हूँ, या चीपर प्रोडक्ट बना रहा हूँ. दैट विल डिटरमाइन व्हाट माय मार्केट सेगमेंट इज. I would do a market survey to find out कि उस segment में कितने लोग आते हैं और कितने लोग शायद इस product को खरीदना चाहेंगे. So the anticipated demand for my product, will also be seen based on what kind of product am I trying to produce, right? So what to produce and in what quantity is the first question that you would like to address, and that quantity will be dependent on the nature of the level of demand based on the price and the segment that you are targeting. यहाँ तक clear है? अब सवाल आता है कि अगर ये सारी चीजें स्टार्टिंग में क्लियर हो जाएं, जो कि होनी जरूरी हैं, then you will decide how to produce. Now, how to produce is about the choice of technique. We call it choice of techniques. भाई अगर मैं लग्जरी प्रोडक्ट बना रहा हूँ तो मेरी अप्रोच बिल्कुल अलग होगी. अगर मैं इंफीरियर प्रोडक्ट बना रहा हूँ, चीपर प्रोडक्ट बना रहा हूँ, मेरी अप्रोच अलग हो सकती है. अगर मैं नॉर्मल प्रोडक्ट बना रहा हूँ, my approach could be another. If I am using a labor intensive technique or a capital intensive technique, if I am making a superior product, my nature of raw material, my procurements will be like that. If I am trying to make a cost effective product, then I'll have to work on supply chain, procurement of resources at a lower cost, large scale production and stuff like that. I may not be more on that quality aspect as focused as when I was making a luxury car compared to a economy car. So choice of techniques and everything will also be worked down to see that you are able to produce that product, even if it's a superior product, within that cost that you want to produce it at. That means even if I'm making a luxury car, that it means I'm not trying to make a cheap car, but still I have to keep some affordability in mind. Am I making a crore rupees car? I mean planning to sell it for a crore? I'm planning a car to be sold between a crore or 2 crore, or I'm planning a super luxury, beyond 5 crores of something like that, or am I planning a luxury car between 50 lakhs to 1 crore? So what price you had kept in mind, based on that and the nature of the category of the product, the nature of competition, obviously that must have been in mind. You would identify what choice of techniques you will have, what, and to support the features that you have anticipated in the product. So here we talk about primarily two things: output and cost. How do I attain this output based on the demand that I had kept in mind, and how do I produce at a cost that I'll be able to sell it at a price that I'm targeting? I have to keep my cost within that, right? And since I cannot keep that cost within that initially, because there's a plant investment and stuff like that in the short run, then how would I cover it up in the long run? All those break-even calculations and stuff like that. Then comes the third aspect: for whom to produce. And this is generally misunderstood by a lot of people. So when you were saying that for whom to produce talked about segmentation or targeting or who's going to buy, the difference here is, the question here is कि आपने पहले ही एक अंदाजा लगा लिया कि किस तरह के लोगों के लिए आप ये प्रोडक्ट बना रहे हैं, isn't it? जब आपने सोचा मैं क्या बनाऊंगा और किस तरह का बनाऊंगा, तो आपने कहीं ना कहीं ये सोच लिया है कि किस कैटेगरी के लोग इसको खरीदेंगे. What would be the segment of the market that you would try to sell this, or the target market. But now when you say for whom to produce, is actually does not mean किसके लिए, but I would rather say जिसके लिए सोचा था वो लोग कहाँ हैं. Where do you find those people? So locating your target market, where are they practically now? Locating the target market, number one. That means the segment or the target market that you had in mind, that I am going to sell it to students who study in MBA colleges, appear for good interviews, would require a pen which is reasonable, but at the same time they can wear it like a special pen that they possess, and it would be in the range of 200 to 500 rupees, a metal pen or whatever. Then where do I find them? Where are they? So if I said that, okay, this number of people, this number or this percentage of people study in colleges of Dehradun, how do I find them? So I'll have to now start looking, where do I find, which are those universities and colleges? Where is that graphic era? Where is that DIT? Where is that UPS? Where is that IMS, and so on? And then trying to figure out how many students are there and how do I reach out to them. So it's about locating them and reaching out to the target market. I'll put it in loose terms. You must have all watched a movie called Dilwale Dulhaniya Le Jayenge, right? And that's where this lead actress, forgetting her name, Kajol, she plays Simran there, right? Simran sings a song, Mere Khabo Mein Koi Aaye, isn't it? Now, she doesn't know who the boy is, but she has an imagination of a dream boy. And same way it might apply to Shah Rukh Khan in the movie. But then after knowing what kind of person they're looking for, it's all about figuring out where that person is. And so whatever, whether a coincidence or in a planned manner, she meets him in a Europe tour and so on. That's exactly what it is. You should know what your profile of the customer is. Customer profiles have already been identified, but now you're trying to locate those customers. Where are they? And reach out to them. So that's where the remaining part of marketing, advertising, branding, supply chain, and logistics, post-production takes place. And that's where we talk about number one, awareness. You got to create awareness about your product. You want those people to come to know that your product exists for them, right? You try to reach out to them, right, to inform them about the product. Then once you have made them aware, you got to try ways to lure them, to convince them about your products. So that's where you try to reach out to them, right? And that's the problem of locating where your customers are and reaching out to them. And then at the same time, you're trying to convince them to buy your products through branding, through a lot of other promotion techniques and so on. And the third problem is that of physically making the product available to them, and that availability talks about the problem of distribution. We call it problem of distribution, logistics, supply chain, and distribution. There are many times fantastic products that you come across on internet or on television, or through advertisements or through word of mouth propagation. But many a times these products, you do not know where are they available, and even if they are, you don't have them available in your city. Sometimes before Amazon and Flipkart, these products were not easily available everywhere. So today with Flipkart and Amazon, it's become easier for you to get the product delivered. But many a times even Flipkart and Amazon says, well, this product is not available on this pin code, or for whatever reasons, right? So even if you've planned your what to produce and how to produce well, and you've convinced people and you've created a very good advertising and marketing strategy, but you are not able to make the product available to the customers, you've again lost it. You could not convert it into sales, and probably some other company might pitch its product, which is following you or is doing the innovation alongside and tries to sell the product. So there are these aspects that we try to cover, that the product has to be made available to people have to be made aware about it, and that's where the problem of distribution comes into play. So for whom to produce actually was, for whom means who exactly is that person that we had profiled, and how do I reach out to them finally? Your data shows that there exists a certain number of people, but where are they and how do you reach out to them? So for example, in case of colleges, I might plan that I would create some kiosks outside university campuses and college campuses, or I might try to run a small campaign within the institutions to promote my pen. A lot of bike companies come and demonstrate their bikes, on campuses and on events around them. Or I can have a canopy outside, or maybe a music event conducted outside, and then it's outdoor promotion where people demonstrate pens on billboards and stuff, and give you samples and free stuff, and tell you that this pen will now be available in your stationery shop or your tuck shop on campus, and then I make that available. So these are the aspects that are related to for whom to produce. So practically understanding these things, if you really understand, there's another very interesting thing that you will realize, that what to produce give you a tentative idea about the price. Keeping in view that price, you anticipated a certain demand. Now, how to produce is that how do I produce the product at a price which is obviously low, at a cost which is still lower than my price that I'm targeting. It's not the first unit obviously, but over a period of time. जितने का बेच रहा हूँ उससे तो कम में बनना चाहिए. So it's not about making products cheaper or affordable, but it is in real senses affordable in terms of the target market. If it's a luxury car, then people in that category should be able to afford it, and they should prefer it over other brands. And then when we talked about for whom to produce, though it is more about advertising, branding, marketing, supply chain, logistics, and availability, which further take course of other subjects which have evolved out of economics. As besides management, you study operations, supply chain, logistics, and so on. बट यहाँ पर हम जो थर्ड एस्पेक्ट कवर करेंगे इसका, दैट्स ओनली दिस पार्ट वेयर वी टॉक अबाउट द नेचर ऑफ द मार्केट. किस तरह का मार्केट स्ट्रक्चर में हम हैं, व्हाट इज द लेवल ऑफ कंपटीशन इन द मार्केट. अब इन दो प्राइस के बीच में जब मेरा प्रोडक्ट रेडी हो गया, इस कॉस्ट पे रेडी हो गया और इस प्राइस पे मैं बेचना चाह रहा हूँ, यहाँ ध्यान दीजिएगा प्लीज, देयर इज अ टेक्निकल प्रॉब्लम. मैंने इस प्राइस पे बेचने का सोचा था, जब कंसीव किया था, इस कॉस्ट पे मैंने बना दिया. अब इस गैप में मैं इसको कहाँ पे पिच करूँ, एट व्हाट प्राइस. अब बनाने के दौरान एक जेस्टेशन पीरियड हुआ होगा. जेस्टेशन पीरियड मीन्स देयर मस्ट हैव बीन सम टाइम इन्वॉल्व इन प्रोड्यूसिंग द प्रोडक्ट. उस समय तक मार्केट में फैशन, टेस्ट, ट्रेंड, प्रेफरेंसेस चेंजेस हुए होंगे, इवेंट्स, ट्रेंड्स, इश्यूज, एक्सपेक्टेशंस में चेंज आया होगा, कोरोना जैसी सिचुएशंस हो सकती हैं, नए प्लेयर्स आ गए हों, आपसे पहले ही किसी ने एक प्रोडक्ट निकाल दिया हो जो आप सोच रहे हो, या आपके बाद कोई निकालने वाला है. उस मार्केट में कितने कॉम्पिटिटर्स हैं, कितने प्लेयर्स हैं, किस तरह की मार्केट है, ये देखना ज़रूरी है. क्योंकि इस दोनों गैप के बीच में जहाँ पे भी मैं अपने प्राइस को पिच करूँगा, वो डिसीजन सिर्फ अकेला मेरे पे डिपेंडेंट नहीं होगा. इट विल बी डिपेंडेंट ऑन व्हाट काइंड ऑफ मार्केट एम आई. अगर मैं अकेला ही होता तो मैं इस प्राइस को कहीं पे पिच कर सकता था. तब सवाल ये आता कि प्राइस को ऊपर ले जाएं या नीचे की तरफ लाएं. अगर हम सस्ता बेचेंगे तो कहीं ऐसा तो नहीं कि लोग प्रोडक्ट को चीप और इन्फीरियर समझ लेंगे. सो आई हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड द नेचर ऑफ माई प्रोडक्ट. अगर प्रोडक्ट मैं सुपीरियर दिखा रहा हूँ, आई वुड ट्राई टू कीप द प्राइसेस हाई. But at the same time, if I keep the prices high, what about other competitors in the market? So is for whom to produce में हम एक चीज़ और पढ़ते हैं, and that is what is called market structure and nature of competition. हमें ये भी देखना ज़रूरी है कि जब प्रोडक्ट को हम जिसके लिए बना रहे हैं वो कस्टमर हमें प्रेफर क्यों करेगा, what sort of competition is there in the market, and how would we beat that competition and make sure that the product is acceptable. So economics covers these questions, and that's why managerial economics covers a lot of questions and answers questions like what should be the goals and objectives of the firm, those kind of decisions, broader strategies that the firm has to create, demand analysis, consumer behavior analysis, pricing decisions, right, product decisions, production decisions related to choice of technique and choice of output, so output decisions. And then along with that there has to be a lot of risk analysis that has to be undertaken. At the same time, the problem of distribution, logistics and supply chain, and profit and cost analysis, break-even analysis, and etc. etc. So all these fall under the purview of managerial economics, and that's where you will be utilizing most of the approaches and tools and analysis that I discussed with you in my previous class. So ये तीन सवाल जो आए, इन्हीं तीन सवाल से अब आपका इकोनॉमिक्स का फ्लो आइडेंटिफाई होगा. So that's what I'm trying to show you finally. So when we talked about what to, the problem of what to produce, we talked about what to produce, how to produce, and for whom to produce. Then it is actually addressing some problems. In broad meaning, what C.K. Prahlad tried to tell was based on the fundamental of economics कि अगर किसी प्रोडक्ट को सक्सेसफुल बनाना है, अगर आप मार्केटिंग के स्टूडेंट हैं और आप समझना चाह रहे हैं व्हाट मेक्स अ सक्सेसफुल प्रोडक्ट, इट्स वेरी डिफिकल्ट टू डिफाइन इट इन वेरी सिंपल लैंग्वेज कि क्या चीज़ चाहिए जो प्रोडक्ट को सक्सेसफुल बनाए. We know that the product should offer some value to the right customers, and then it should also be, even if you make a great product, if it is not available, then what do you do? And if it is available, there are other competitors who follow you, what do you do? So there are so many questions. So he talked about certain A's, if you remember, and we talked about, if you remember, acceptability, affordability, and availability. And besides availability, I'm adding another A, awareness. So now what you see is that in a way, this is what we are trying to cover in these three questions. Similarly, if you compare it with the 4 P's of marketing, you would also find a close relationship there. What to produce is more related to the product, right? How is also somewhere, how and what together, in what quantities, and then how are you going to produce, is also somewhere talking about the aspect of pricing, right? And pricing is also addressed in for whom, because based on the competition you're trying to find how much are you going to price your product. So who is the target market, how are you going to produce that it is sold at that price, at the same time how do you make sure that your product stands out against competition at that price. And then you talk about place, how do you place it, and promotion, if you remember. So these 4 P's converted into 4 C's, if you remember, and then you will again find them here, or 4 A's. So acceptability, affordability, awareness, and availability were there, right? But then 4C said understand the customer. So instead of the product, shift your focus to customer. That's again what to produce. Then understand the aspect of cost. Price is not the only cost. अगर आपने कॉम्प्लेक्स में एक रेस्टोरेंट खोला और वहाँ पे पार्किंग की प्रॉब्लम है, that's one problem related to price. Even if the restaurant is good, people will find it difficult to come, right? And then price. Price does not only mean the menu and the cost, but अगर मुझे उस पार्किंग के लिए कहीं और जाके पैसे खर्च करने हैं, या there is a fear कि आपकी गाड़ी पार्क करने के बाद चालान हो जाएगा, that's an additional cost to you, to the customer. So what is the actual cost that he has to bear instead of the price? Then convenience.
Sir,
Yeah,
sir, process will not be there.
I'm coming to it. So convenience is the third factor that we are talking from the perspective of place. अभी हम सिर्फ ये दिखा रहे हैं that how the focus shifts from the company to the customer. And then finally we are talking about promotion, and promotion was more about communication. It was not about just awareness. So marketing के भी funders अगर आप ये देखो, ये सारे कहाँ से निकल गए हैं? They're coming all out of the basic fundamentals of economics. The reason I did not talk about process, people, physical evidence, participation, all there are subsequent P's that have evolved over a period of time. They are also equally important. So if I talk about process, it is also related to how to produce. But process would also be applicable a lot of other places. It's also there in marketing. So that's okay if you're talking about services, if you're talking about extended P's, you can go up to that. But since I'm not covering marketing, I'll not go in that detail. So I just talk about the generic model. So all these concepts of marketing or services marketing, product marketing, and so on are also evolving out of the basic question of what, how, and for whom. So that the basic idea of what is acceptability, the product should be something that people need, it should be need-based, it should be acceptable, it should be produced in a manner that you can make it affordable. Affordable does not mean cheap, but if you want a luxury car, then also it should be affordable, and it should have those based on the features that you are giving, you should be able to produce at a target cost. And then when you talk about for whom to produce, you're talking about availability, but availability should be also supporting awareness, and awareness should be supported by availability. So people should, sometimes the product is available, people are not aware, and sometimes people are aware, they want it, but they do not know how the product will be made available, and that's the problem of distribution. I hope you understood this. So now this gives the flow to your entire subject. How? This what to produce will mostly be covered in a demand analysis, where you will understand demand and against price and factors affecting demand. We will also study supply alongside, because it's a part of microeconomics and they're both related topics. But primarily it's the demand analysis that we are talking about in what to produce. How to produce is more about production and cost analysis. What do we call it? Production and cost analysis. And for whom to produce, which is the third part, will be more from the perspective of, though I said logistics and distribution, but since that becomes a separate subject in economics, we would cover market structures and profit decisions. That means किस तरह का मार्केट में हम ऑपरेट कर रहे हैं जब प्रोडक्ट बन गया है, कस्टमर्स जिनको हम टारगेट कर रहे हैं वो कस्टमर्स और वो मार्केट किस तरह की है. इज इट दैट इट्स अ कॉम्पिटिटिव मार्केट वेयर देयर आर लॉट ऑफ प्लेयर्स, or am I just the only player in the market? Do I dominate the market, or am I what do you call insignificant player in the market? So all those factors will finally determine कि मैं अपने product को कहाँ पर price करूँगा, what will be my final pricing, and what will be my control on the price and level of profits. This is primarily the microeconomics part of your managerial economics, and then a few things related to macro aspects will be understood. But these three are very important, three demand, production cost, and market structures, which you answer through these questions. Is that clear? So let's reconnect.
Yes, sir.
Let's reconnect because we are consuming the 40 minutes. Let's reconnect and then go ahead with the first part, utility and demand analysis today.
Yes, sir.